I call these my lazy day brownies. They come together super quickly. They have those shiny, crackly tops that I'm always trying to achieve in my brownies, and they're miles better than box mix. First thing, get your oven preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, you're going to need a large mixing bowl. First ingredient is our sugar. You need 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar, and you're going to need 2 large eggs, if I can crack these. Add these in with your sugar. Now here is what you're going to do to get shiny, crackly brownie tops in any brownie recipe. Just combine your eggs and sugar first, and then use a whisk to beat them together until they're lightened in color. So I just start nice and slow, and then once they're combined, just beat vigorously for like 30 to 60 seconds. We're slightly dissolving the sugar, and we're also slightly whipping the eggs. What this does is it creates that meringue-like shiny, crackly layer on top. Go at least 30 seconds. It's a good arm workout. Once it's that nice pale yellow color, we can add our vanilla extract. For this recipe, we're using a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We'll give that a quick stir. And I used my homemade vanilla extract, so you have those little vanilla bean specks, which are totally going to disappear with the brown chocolate, but it looks really pretty right now. Slide this out of the way for just a second. The next thing you need is a 1/2 cup of melted butter. A lot of times I tell you, make sure your butter's cooled before you use it. Not this case. If it's super hot, that's totally fine. We are immediately going to add a 1/2 cup of cocoa powder to it right after it's melted. I prefer natural cocoa powder with this recipe. And if you really want to deepen the chocolate flavor, add a pinch of espresso powder. This is just like a 1/4 teaspoon of espresso. Add it right in with the butter. And then we're going to whisk these together. Oop. Don't want to lose any. And adding this cocoa powder with the warm butter is going to bloom the cocoa, which means it's really going to release a lot of that deep, rich chocolate flavor instead of just mixing it in with the flour or adding it in right to the butter and sugar. So you're going to get a nice, rich, fudgy, chocolatey flavor and texture without having to melt any actual chocolate. You don't need to whisk this nearly as vigorously as we did our other mixture. Just go ahead and pour that chocolate right into your butter mixture. And then just use a spatula to fold everything together until it's nice and uniform. All right, flour. Good brownies don't actually use a whole lot of flour. You only need 1/2 cup for this recipe. And for the salt, we're only going to use, I use a rounded 1/4 teaspoon. 1/2 teaspoon is too much. A 1/4 is just enough. I like just a little bit more. So I do a rounded or heaping 1/4. And then I fold this in about halfway. And then if I'm adding chocolate chips, I'll add those here. I like to use about a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips, and you can use mini or regular. These are semi-sweet, and I like to use mini just because they distribute really nicely and add these little pops of chocolate. And then just finish folding everything together. You already did all the heavy lifting. You don't need to be super vigorous here, just to get it nicely combined. Uniform, no dry streaks or anything like that. I just think these are so simple to make. They're easier than my ultra fudgy brownies, which I also love. You know, if I just want something quick, these are a great option. We're going to bake these in a 9-inch square pan. I always line mine with parchment paper. It makes cleanup a lot easier, makes removal a lot easier, but you can just lightly grease your pan instead if you prefer. I'll tell you what it doesn't make easier is spreading the brownie batter. It always wants to slide around a little bit. There's always a trade-off. I mean, in a lot of ways, it should be such a basic brownie. You know, sometimes you just want a basic brownie, but those little things like beating the egg whites or the eggs really well and blooming the cocoa powder, they go a long way in making a difference. And we don't have to use any artificial ingredients or really fake additives that you'll find in a lot of those box mixes, which is nice. I'm not trying to pretend it's health food or anything though. All right, these go into the center rack of your 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to need to bake for about 23 minutes. They'll be finished baking when a toothpick inserted in the center comes out with a few moist, fudgy crumbs, or if it comes out clean, that's also a sign it's definitely done. So while they're warm, they're going to be impossible to neatly cut and remove them from the pan. You're just going to have to eat them with a spoon. Just be careful not to burn yourself. If you want to be able to slice the brownies, wait until they've cooled at least 95%, and then you'll be able to dig in. Since we did this with parchment paper, it's very easy to remove the brownies from the pan and cut into them. Are you a corner or center brownie person, dear viewer? All right, I'm gonna stop cutting these. I'm doing a terrible job. They're so good, better than box mix, and they have those nice shiny tops. If you try this one, let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. My favorite part. You know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of my mom's brownies. Just like nostalgia, I guess. I don't know. They're really good. What is all over?
The head chef down here?
Is he in the bathroom? Shell there.
Chef! How is he just now made noise?
It is 1/4 teaspoon. No, it's not. Oh, chef. What is that noise? What are you doing? Making sure that's not shell in there. Hold on. He's unhinged. Oh, I did a terrible job cutting those evenly, so I'm just not gonna cut any further.